Chicago, on an early autumn morning. The chill in the air wrapped itself around every street corner, while golden sunlight spilled gently across glass towers, reflecting like scattered amber on the sidewalk. The city was slowly waking up, through the sound of honking horns, footsteps tapping along concrete, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee drifting from cramped breakfast joints in the heart of downtown. Tucked between the cold steel and modern glass stood a small, unassuming diner called Harbor Deli. It wasn't fancy, not even trendy, but it carried a quiet warmth, like the kind of place where people stop in for an egg sandwich and black coffee and leave feeling seen, even if just for 5 fleeting minutes, before stepping back into the chaos of the world. And if you happened to be there in the early hours, the first person you'd likely see wasn't a manager or a sharply dressed host. It was a woman in a slightly faded apron, curls tied neatly behind her head, moving with quiet purpose. Her name was Rachel Evans, 34 years old, a single mum to an 8-year-old girl. Rachel had worked at Harbor Deli for almost 4 years, ever since her husband walked out, leaving her and her daughter with nothing but rent bills and grocery lists. Life hadn't been kind, but you wouldn't see that in her eyes. Even on days when her paycheck barely covered the lights and the cheapest groceries, Rachel still smiled. She refused to fall apart. Not when a little girl waited for bedtime stories and kisses goodnight. At work, Rachel was more than just a waitress. She was a quiet leader, a shoulder behind the kitchen door, a buffer between mistakes and harsh consequences. There was Emily, 19, a freshman trying to pay tuition through her shifts. She was clumsy, soft-spoken, always mixing up orders. But Rachel never snapped. She'd whisper, "It's okay, everyone has a first time," and step in without judgment. Then there was Chris, 21, recently moved to Chicago. A quiet soul, working the floor to save up for a technical degree. When he forgot to give a customer their receipt on his second day, it was Rachel who stepped up, took the blame, and calmed the situation before anyone else noticed. She didn't have a title, no office, no special name tag. But to Emily and Chris, Rachel was the big sister, the person they instinctively turned to when things felt too heavy. No one really knew what she sacrificed to show up every morning at 6 a.m., waking at 5 to prep breakfast for her daughter, leaving her with a neighbor and jogging 3 blocks just to unlock the diner in time. Rachel didn't complain. Even when her bones ached, even on 4 hours of sleep, she greeted each customer like an old friend. She remembered who liked their coffee black, who asked for extra crispy toast, and who walked in with tired eyes after sleepless nights. In a world that often overlooks people like Rachel, she had quietly become the foundation, the invisible thread that kept Harbor Deli from falling apart. But what she didn't know was that everything was about to change, and it would start with a moment so small, so ordinary, that no one noticed. Except for one man sitting quietly in the corner, watching the world finally notice the woman it had overlooked for far too long. It was a busy Saturday morning at Harbor Deli. The scent of freshly brewed coffee blended with the clinking of ceramic cups and the rhythmic hiss of sandwich presses, creating a familiar kind of chaos. Emily, holding a tray and trying to navigate the crowded floor, darted between tables. Her eyes scanned the overflowing order list, heart racing in the middle of the breakfast rush. Then it happened. A small mistake. Instead of delivering a soft poached egg to the man by the window, she accidentally handed over a plate of waffles meant for another table. A minor error, the kind any new server might make. But for Victor Barnes, the floor manager, it wasn't minor. Nothing ever was. In his early 40s, Victor had a gaze that constantly seemed to be measuring, judging. And his voice? Loud enough to turn heads without a microphone. So, no one was surprised when he shouted across the room, "Emily, what the hell are you doing? It's a simple order and you still messed it up. You trying to drive our customers away?" Emily froze, her face flushed, hands trembling so badly she nearly dropped the tray. The suited man she had mistakenly served glanced up awkwardly. Customers started turning, some stealing glances, others looking away, trying not to get involved. From the far corner of the room, Rachel saw everything. Without hesitation, she moved in, calm, composed. As always, she stepped next to Emily and spoke gently. "I'm sorry. That was my mistake. I should have reminded her to double-check. I'll fix the order right away." Her voice was steady, protective, shielding Emily once again, like she had so many times before. But Victor didn't stop. Instead, he turned to Rachel, a smirk curling on his lips, and said, "Of course, Saint Rachel to the rescue. Always covering for the newbies. What is it? Do you feel like their mother? Oh wait, you are a single mum, aren't you?" The entire room went silent. "Can't raise your own kid right, but love telling everyone else how to do their jobs? This is a restaurant, not your daycare center." Every word from Victor was like a blade, each one cutting deeper. But Rachel didn't speak. She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She just stood there, silent, like she had so many times before, because she knew speaking up could mean losing her job. And if she lost this job, it wouldn't just be her life falling apart. It would mean no rent payment, no milk, no school fees. Sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's a sacrifice, a mother's burden carried quietly for the child waiting at home for a bedtime story and a smile that hides all the pain of the day. Emily looked down, tears streaming down her cheeks. She wanted to say something, anything, but no words came. Rachel reached out and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Her eyes said it all. "It's okay, sweetie. Don't cry. I'm used to it." Victor scoffed, turned on his heel, and walked away like he had just won some small, pitiful battle. And just like that, the noise returned. The room resumed, as if nothing had happened. But not everyone had forgotten, because at a small corner table, tucked behind a cactus pot, sat a man who hadn't taken his eyes off Rachel since she arrived. He wasn't a regular. He wasn't a passerby. And if anyone had paid attention, they would have seen the shift in his expression, how the cold in his eyes sharpened the moment Victor spoke those words. That man was Jordan Mitchell, CEO of the entire Harbor Deli chain, and he had just witnessed everything. The air inside Harbor Deli turned thick. Rachel stood still. Emily kept her eyes down. The customers tried to return to their lukewarm coffee and half-eaten sandwiches, but everyone in that room felt it. Something was deeply wrong, and in the far corner by the window sat the same man who hadn't taken his eyes off Rachel since the morning rush began. He wore a simple shirt and a grey jacket, nothing flashy, but his eyes, calm, focused, sharp, saw everything. Jordan Mitchell, 42, CEO of the entire Harbor Deli Group. A man who believed that to truly understand a company, you must first walk in as if you're invisible. And that's exactly what he did today. No entourage, no assistants, no title announced. Just one man with a deep suspicion and a stronger desire to rediscover the soul of the company he built. As Victor turned to walk away, still mumbling under his breath, Jordan stood up. He didn't move fast. He didn't raise his voice, but every step seemed to ripple through the room like an invisible tide. Spoons stopped clinking. Emily held her breath. Rachel, still looking down, hadn't noticed the stranger approaching. Then came a voice. Calm, deep, resonant. "Excuse me." Victor turned, annoyed by the interruption. "Can I help you?" His tone dismissive, his stance condescending. Jordan didn't flinch. He looked Victor straight in the eye. Not with anger, but with the kind of clarity that makes people nervous. "I just have one question," Jordan said. "Why do you think humiliating an employee in front of customers is ever acceptable behavior?" The room froze. Emily's jaw dropped. Chris, behind the counter, stopped mid-motion, and Rachel slowly lifted her head, her eyes wide with disbelief. Victor crossed his arms, trying to regain control. "I'm sorry, and you are?" Jordan didn't answer right away. He reached calmly into his coat pocket, pulled out a sleek black card holder, and removed a single business card. With quiet finality, he held it out to Victor. Victor took it, eyes scanning the name. Jordan Mitchell, Chief Executive Officer, Harbor Deli Group. His face went pale. The arrogance drained from his expression in seconds. Jordan remained steady, voice calm as ever. I run this place. He didn't need to yell. He didn't need to threaten. The weight of his presence spoke louder than any words could. Rachel stared, blinking in disbelief. Victor stammered, trying to salvage himself. Mr. Mitchell, I didn't know. Jordan raised a hand, a quiet but unmistakable signal to stop. Exactly, he said. You didn't know, and that is the problem. Then he turned to Rachel. There was no pity in his gaze, only respect. Miss Evans, I am truly sorry for what you've endured. No one, especially someone as dedicated as you, should ever be treated that way. The cafe was silent. So silent you could hear the drip of coffee into a glass pot across the room. And for the first time in years, Rachel felt seen. Not as a tired single mother, not as the employee who always stayed quiet, but as a human being, worthy of dignity, worthy of kindness. And with Jordan Mitchell's quiet but powerful arrival, the entire game had just changed. The air inside Harbor Deli felt frozen, like time itself had just stopped. Victor still held Jordan Mitchell's business card in his trembling hand. Sweat dotted his temples. The smug, domineering manager from just minutes ago now looked like a man waking up from a nightmare, only to realize there was no way out. Jordan didn't waste time. No meetings, no deliberation. He looked directly at Victor, his voice calm, but every word landed like a hammer of judgment. You've destroyed the working environment here. You've made people afraid instead of helping them grow, and you've let your arrogance drown out your conscience. Victor opened his mouth to object, but Jordan raised a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. I'm not here to argue, he said firmly. I'm here to end this. A pause, then came the sentence that silenced the room. You're fired. Effective immediately. The silence that followed was absolute, and then a single clap. From one customer, then another, and then the entire restaurant erupted in applause. People stood, they clapped, not just for what had happened, but for what it meant. A release, a reckoning, a new beginning. Victor's face turned crimson, his eyes filled with both rage and disbelief. He stepped back, stammering, You can't. I've worked here for 7 years. Jordan didn't flinch. His voice held no anger, no pity, just unwavering resolve. And in those 7 years you sowed fear and oppression. I will not allow it to continue for even one more day. No one spoke. No one intervened. Victor had no choice but to lower his head and walk out. The door swung open. The tiny bell above chimed once, a soft tink that marked the end of a toxic era inside a quiet little cafe in downtown Chicago. Rachel stood frozen. She couldn't believe what she'd just witnessed. For 4 years she had learned to endure, to stay quiet for the sake of a paycheck, to swallow her dignity for her daughter, and now, in just a matter of minutes, someone had stood up for her. Emily clutched her server's notebook to her chest, eyes brimming with tears. Chris, behind the counter, let out a shaky breath, as if a weight he'd carried for a year had finally lifted. Finally, Chris whispered. Someone saw what we've been going through. Jordan turned to them, gave a small nod, gentle but full of power. Things are going to change, he said, starting today. The applause slowly faded. In its place, a stillness. Not heavy, not empty, but the kind of silence that comes after a storm has passed. Rachel stood frozen in place, fingers still gripping her serving tray. Her eyes, wide, uncertain, were locked on the man who had just unraveled the entire order of this familiar kitchen with only a few quiet sentences. Jordan Mitchell stepped closer. His voice was no longer firm and commanding like when he had confronted Victor. Now it carried the weight of reflection, like a man who had finally found the answer he didn't know he'd been searching for. Miss Evans, he began. Rachel turned, startled by how gently and respectfully he spoke her name. I've been watching you all morning. You're not just a server. You are the reason this place hasn't fallen apart. He paused, letting the words settle, letting them find their way to her heart. You train new staff. You clean up others' mistakes. You shoulder blame to protect your team. You carry the weight so others can breathe. Then Jordan looked straight into her eyes. You've been doing the job of a manager for 4 years. The only thing missing was the title. Silence fell once again, but this time it was filled with something else. Realization. Emily's eyes went wide. Chris looked up from the counter, stunned, as if someone had just spoken aloud the thought he had carried quietly for months. Rachel opened her mouth, then stopped, unsure. Her eyes drifted, caught between disbelief and the fragile hope of being seen. I just been doing my job, she said quietly. I never thought I could be a manager. Jordan nodded, but not out of doubt. He looked at her like he was seeing something she hadn't yet seen in herself. Leadership isn't about giving orders, he said. It's about making people want to do what's right. And from what I've seen today, you are that kind of leader. Just then, Emily stepped forward, her voice shaky but strong. Rachel, you've been more of a mentor than anyone I've ever met. You never yelled, never judged, only guided. I never felt like I mattered at work, until I worked with you. Chris spoke from behind the counter, voice low but resolute. You're the only reason I stayed here. If you weren't around, I would have quit months ago. Rachel turned to them, tears welling up in her eyes. But I'm just a single mum, she whispered. No degree, no formal experience. I've never managed anything. Emily gently took Rachel's arm, looked up at her with unwavering eyes. But you have something none of the other managers ever did. A heart. Among the many eyes still watching, amidst all the emotions too big for names, a small voice broke the silence, soft as wind chimes in early summer, but it struck something deep in Rachel's heart. Mum, what's going on? Rachel turned. Standing by the counter, holding a small cup of orange juice, was Lily, her 8-year-old daughter. She wore her favorite pink sweater, her tiny backpack slung to one side, her dark ponytail bouncing as she shifted nervously on her toes. Lily didn't understand what had just happened. She only saw her mother standing in the middle of the diner, people looking at her, and her mum's eyes full of tears. Rachel knelt down, arms wide. Lily ran into them. A small, tight hug that felt like an anchor, holding Rachel steady in the middle of the emotional storm inside her. Mummy got a promotion, sweetheart, Rachel whispered. Her lips trembled slightly, but her eyes shimmered, not with sadness, but with something much stronger. Lily looked up, beaming. Really? Can we celebrate? I want pancakes with ice cream. Rachel laughed, her first true laugh of the morning. Not the kind meant to hide tears, not the one you use when you're trying to be strong. It was the laugh of someone who had finally found belief again. In that moment, all the fear, all the doubt, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, people like me don't get chances like that, all of it vanished. Because now Rachel understood. This opportunity wasn't just for her. It was for Lily, for Emily, for Chris, for every quiet, overlooked soul who showed up every day, did the right thing and never got seen. Rachel hugged Lily tighter, and for the first time in her life, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be, ready to rise, ready to lead, and ready to carry others with her. The diner was still quiet, but this time silence no longer meant fear. It wasn't defeat, it was anticipation for something good that had just begun. Jordan Mitchell, calm eyes, steady voice, stepped forward once more. He didn't look at Rachel with pity, not from above, but eye to eye, like someone who knew exactly what he had just found. A true leader. Miss Evans, Jordan said, voice firm yet gentle. Welcome to your new role as manager of Harbor Deli. It wasn't shouted, but the words rang out like the first ray of sun after a storm. Emily gasped. Oh my God, Rachel, you deserve this so much. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but her smile lit up the room like she'd just won the lottery. Chris didn't say much. He just nodded, but his eyes said everything. If it weren't for Rachel, he would have walked away long ago. And Rachel? She stood there, hand wrapped around the tiny fingers of Lily, her 8-year-old daughter, who now looked up at her mum with eyes full of pride. Not just because she got promoted, but because, today, her mum had risen. Not just survived, not just endured, but stood tall. Because she always deserved to. The diner didn't look the same anymore. Not because the walls changed, but because something in the air did. Today, it had witnessed something real. Change. Not powered by policy, not pushed by fear, but sparked by kindness, courage, and the decision not to stay silent in the face of injustice.